It's been another rough ride for investors in some of China's biggest technology companies. The Hang Seng Tech Index, the benchmark technology index here in Hong Kong, slid more than 5% on Friday, stretching 4 consecutive days of losses, bringing the total loss for the week to around 10%. Investors are concerned by noises from economists that China simply will not be able to support its economy if it continues with a so-called zero COVID strategy, which has seen weeks of lockdowns in its financial hub of Shanghai and mass testing across its capital city, Beijing, as it tries to prevent the same thing happening in Beijing, that is, a widespread COVID-19 outbreak. The daily case numbers are relatively low by international standards. We're looking at dozens of new cases in Beijing every day, but China's strict adherence to this zero COVID policy is unnerving investors. It's also unnerving international companies that are either based in China for major factory operations and manufacturing or rely on Chinese factories for their supply chain. Examples of that include Adidas, who say that the revenue in China has slumped by 1/3 in the first 3 months of this year. Also, car makers such as Tesla, who are struggling to work around Beijing's insistence on them using what's called a closed-loop system, whereby all of their staff effectively have to live on site at the factory to avoid them being prevented from actually going to work. They're operating on 24-hour shift systems to try to make it possible to keep the factory running and keep production up despite all these limitations. Other companies also complaining of the difficulties they're facing. We've had complaints from German manufacturers in China. Also, a report from a Japanese factory association says that 2/3 of its operators there still aren't back on track with their factory lines up and running some 3 or 4 weeks after lockdowns were initially imposed on Shanghai. This is all impacting confidence in the Chinese system of dealing with COVID-19. President Xi Jinping of China dismissing that. He told political leaders in China a couple of days ago that these policies will, he said, stand the test of time, and he dismissed any international criticism of this type of policy as irresponsible and said that the policymakers must stand firm for the good and the long-term public health of the Chinese citizens. Richard Kimber for SABC News in Hong Kong.